Hey, good evening. Hey, this is John Morrow, and I'm giving my presentation over the Branch Davidians for our religious cults. Um, I was just a kid when this happened. This particular event happened in Waco, Texas. This happened in the early 90s, and I was just right out of high school, so I remember certain aspects of it, but I certainly didn't. I didn't remember the the build up or the lead up to what I now have researched and learned. So I wanted to share with you this evening a little bit about what I've learned in my deeper dive, if you will, of the Branch Davidians. As religious movements start off as fringe groups before they turn into something more. Some of them are unique, and some of them sometimes are sinister or dark or just weird even. And then some turn out to be um, super militaristic. And they build up a compound, as in the case this was. But here's some things that I didn't know that I wanted to share with you. The Branch Davidians are an apocalyptic religious cult. Their whole theology is about predictions. What's going to happen? What is the Bible saying that it's going to happen? And so they lead these people and these groups of people based off of their predictions of what the Bible means or what they interpreted it means. And so the Branch Davidians started in 1955 by Benjamin Roden, uh, and that Benjamin's group was actually a sect off of a group, a Seventh Day Adventist group that started in 1935 by Victor Houteff. And Houteff had actually, him and his wife had purchased quite a bit of land, almost 1,000 acres, northeast of Waco, and they renamed it New Mount Carmel. And this is kind of where this kind of takes off, but it's the backstory that leads up to this that was just mind boggling for me. Um, they named this new property New Mount Carmel Center, and following the death of Victor in 1955, his wife Florence usurped him, replaced him in the leadership capacity, and she believed that she was a prophet. And so she started predicting some things for her church and followers and members, and believing that she was a prophet. Now, after several of these failed prophecies, Florence kind of died out. I mean, that's kind of the thing with these things. They lose believability when they're not able to predict things. And so she had a son named Benjamin who was super weird, but she was also had a guy by the name of Vernon Howell that started following her, and she started working with and teaching in the biblical prophecy in the early 80s. And her and her son, or I say her and her son, Vernon and her son was kind of the lead groups of these two replacements. And Hal kind of gained some group followers and had a separation from Lewis's main group that George, her son, was trying to take over. Now, Vernon started a group and he named themselves the Davidian Branch Davidian Seventh Day Adventist Association, which was the exact same name of Lewis's um, Roden's group, who George was trying to take over. So I had the same names. They had the competing same names. Um, Now, when Lewis died in 1987, Howe alertly filed some documents claiming to be the president of the Davidian Branch Davidian Seventh Day Adventist Association, even though his group was a competing group with Lewis's group, who was then ran by George. Well, George got very angry, and so he challenged Vernon to see who was the most righteous spiritual leader to lead the Branch Davidians, kind of in a spiritual supremacy, if you will. And so what George told Vernon that he was going to do was dig up a 2 century-year-old body, and whoever could resurrect this body in front of the group was obviously the superior. And so when this gets weird, when Vernon found this out, he went to the authorities, and the authorities didn't believe him and said, "You're going to need some evidence." Long story short, Vernon went with 7 of his followers armed to the teeth and hit New Mount Carmel. There was a gunfight, among other things, and there was a standoff, and he pushed George out, and George went to the authorities. And so there was this big legal process that took to the early 90s, and basically what it found out was that George was charged with, of course, digging up a body and moving it and handling all that, and Hal and his group was acquitted. And Hal then changed his name for a more biblical term, David Koresh, meaning, the lineage of David, King David in the Bible. And Koresh was a Hebrew term for a biblical prophet. David then started separating his married people in his church, separating the women, telling the men that they had to be practice celibacy, and that he could only appropriate with the women. And God was calling him to build an army and a church, and he started having sexual relations with 12 and 13-year-olds. He's fathered many, many children, and later on, in 1993, as a result of a 1992 start of ATF and FBI, they had the assault. ATF and FBI assaulted the Branch Davidians. A gunfight ensued, where 4 ATF agents was killed. 6, I believe, were killed from the Branch Davidians, and then 16 others wounded. And then the 51-day standoff that turned into the horrific event that happened. But what led up to this was a bunch of this strange behavior that we would find super strange, that led all the way up to what we know today. So that's it. I hope you learned something, and I hope I've helped clear up a muddy picture of why this all happened, or why at least it all started. So that's it. Have a good evening. Thank you.